On the show tonight, big AI companies are making billion-dollar offers to lure AI researchers away from competitors, which may not always make the strongest roster.
People think things are maybe a little unfair, a little skewed too much, and so it ends up having worse team performance.
A look at the high demand for AI superstars. That's coming up next on Marketplace here on WNYC. We'll be back with All Things Considered at 7 tonight. 75 degrees, partly sunny right now in New York City. We'll see temperatures in the upper 50s overnight tonight. And then for tomorrow in our area, it's going to be really nice. Highs probably reaching the upper 70s in the afternoon, low around 60 tomorrow night. It'll be like that, quite frankly, through the weekend as well, through Labor Day. So get out there. Hopefully you have some nice barbecue plans for the weekend. Do something in the park maybe. It's WNYC. It's a Friday. We're coming up on 6:30.
WNYC is a media partner of the Public Theater Shakespeare in the Park, presenting Twelfth Night, directed by Saheem Ali, at the Delacorte Theater in Central Park now through September 14th. Open to all. More at publictheater.org.
WNYC, independent journalism in the public interest. 93.9 FM and AM 820. NPR News and the New York Conversation.
Marketplace is supported by Yubico, makers of the YubiKey. YubiKey helps protect important digital applications and services. YubiKey, still undefeated, the original passkey. More at yubico.com.
Sticky inflation, Fed drama, and the rise of cute debt. It's all on the show today from American Public Media. This is Marketplace.
Marketplace is supported by Progressive Insurance. Progressive is currently looking for individuals in a variety of career fields who are interested in building a career and joining an inclusive and unique culture. More information, including application, at progressive.com/careers.
In Denver, I'm Amy Scott, in for Kai Rizdal. It's Friday, August 29th. Good to have you with us. Inflation is still with us. The Personal Consumption Expenditures, or PCE price index, that's the inflation measure the Fed pays more attention to. It rose by 0.2% in July from the month before, though the annual rate stayed flat at 2.6%. But core inflation, minus food and energy, was higher than it's been in months, 2.9%. Joining me to talk about that and the rest of the week's economic news are Courtney Brown at Axios and Jordan Holman at the New York Times. Hello, you two.
Hey, Amy.
So let's start, Jordan, with the news also out today about consumer spending, which rose in July in spite of that still stubborn inflation, and also at a time when surveys show declining consumer confidence. What do you make of that?
Yeah, so this July, goods rose a bit faster than services. And what I make of that is that people want to spend on the things that they think they need. So, this report was really bolstered by sales in motor vehicles, some of those other durable goods, and less so on the discretionary. And I think all of that, kind of the big picture, is that people know that tariffs will affect prices, tariffs will affect what they can get. And it seems like consumers have just decided, let me get the stuff that will last me in the long run, the thing that's a big ticket item that I might need, and get it before the expected prices will increase.
Okay, and so those tariff worries are kind of showing up in those consumer sentiment numbers. We learned from the University of Michigan today, sentiment was down 6% from July.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, and it does make sense, though. For the majority of this year, people have been hearing about tariffs, and the consequence of tariffs is higher prices. And even in the recent earnings calls for retailers, they're starting to be more vocal about the fact that they'll have to raise prices. So I think it's just only reasonable that people will finally get to the point that it might not be happening now, but it will happen, and that's affecting the sentiment report.
Okay, Courtney, this news is more for the Fed to chew on when it meets next week. And recent signals have been that officials will be cutting interest rates in September. Do you think this latest inflation data changes that equation?
I'm not sure it does. We heard from Fed Governor Christopher Waller last night. You might remember he was one of the two governors who favored an interest rate cut the last time the Fed met. Of course, they kept interest rates steady. Yeah. You know, what he said was he's betting that any tariff-related costs that businesses are going to deal with, that consumers might deal with, it's going to be a one-off. It's going to be a one-time price hike. Underlying economic activity is actually slowing. Hiring is stalling out, and the Fed needs to relieve the pressure on the economy for that reason. Now, of course, he could be wrong, right? He could be wrong that the tariff-related inflation is a one-time price hike. Some Fed presidents have come out and said they are way more worried about inflation being sticky, as seems to be suggested by the data today.
Right. And of course, the other big Fed news this week was the president's efforts to fire Fed Governor Lisa Cook over unproven allegations of mortgage fraud. Staying with you, Courtney, because you cover the Fed, Cook has sued to block that effort. There was a court hearing today. What is the latest?
What a week for Fed Governor Cook. Like, let's just take a second. Yeah. Monday night, the president fired Fed Governor Lisa Cook, and today was the first official hearing after Cook moved to sue the president. This hearing was really just about the lawyers making their case about whether Governor Cook should remain Governor Cook as this case plays through the court. Her lawyers are arguing that she should be able to serve out her duty as a Fed governor, potentially vote in the Fed policy meeting in September. And the government is saying, no, she should step down as the courts decide, whether or not the president has the legal right to fire Fed Governor Cook.
And no ruling yet on whether she gets to stay in her position while that plays out, right?
No ruling yet. As of Friday evening, East Coast time, Cook's fate is still up in the air. And we are expecting some ruling perhaps next week after the long holiday weekend. And again, this would just be, can she stay in her job as the court rules on whether or not President Trump is in his legal right to fire Cook.
Okay. And Jordan, I'm sure you've been watching this too. Can you talk about the implications for the broader economy if the president is successful in stacking the Federal Reserve Board with loyalists? I mean, sure, we'd all love to have lower interest rates, but we've also seen how people feel about inflation.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, the big idea here behind the Federal Reserve's independence and not just having a board full of Trump loyalists is that their decisions around things like interest rates should just be guided purely by economic data and like what's happening in the economy and not just how the president feels or, any political party. Because once you start answering to the president in that way, it can really obscure what's happening. And it can obscure the tools needed to make sure that prices are where they are, that you're responding to things in the job market. And in the long run, that could lead to booms and busts that just isn't a sustainable thing. So that's the real implication. It might not be, right now, but it could send us down a slippery slope. And that's why the independence of the Federal Reserve is really important.
And real quick, Jordan, before we let you go, you, as part of your job, talk to lots of CEOs. What are you hearing about trying to run a business in this moment?
Okay, every CEO I've talked to has just really been like, we're trying to keep our heads down. In addition to everybody, there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of, you don't know what the third rail is by what you say or what you do. And so, yes, they're clearly watching what's happening to other CEOs like Intel, but also the Federal Reserve. But just everyone's telling me they're trying to keep their head down, focus on what they can control, which understandably is harder than ever right now.
Right. There's a lot that they can't control. Well, Jordan Holman with the New York Times and Courtney Brown, always good to talk to you. Courtney's at Axios. Thank you so much and have a good weekend.
Thanks, Amy. Happy weekend.
On Wall Street, a dip to end the week. We'll have the details when we do the numbers.